Shira.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how's it going?
Good. Did you just have a show this morning?
No, we are actually prepping for VidCon, which is like the Comic-Con of YouTube. So we're right now taking down our studio because we're setting up a whole booth. So we're kind of in production transition right now.
Yay. Well, I know that you're really busy, so thank you for joining my class today.
Of course, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm a big supporter and fan, so always here to help and be part.
Thank you. Well, so what we're talking about networking, and I've told the class and all the online viewers that you really charted your own course and you created What's Trending, your online show, really with a lot of passion and determination. And so what I'd like to know, you were right out of school, you took all these red carpet gigs and made a reel. How did you get up the courage to really boldly go out there and network and go for your dreams?
I think it's one of those things, it's like in your genes or DNA or it isn't. And I definitely think I see people that have evolved over the years and they've, through finding their passions and not really having a choice of whether to pursue them or not, that boldness just comes through. It's hard to dismiss someone who is super passionate and is not only, it's not just about passion, but it's about working hard at building and working on that craft and continuing to challenge yourself by learning and surrounding yourself mentors and people that you look up to and inspire you at other levels in their career that you look up to. And so I think people saw that passion and that was the foundation. And for me, it was, I never had a choice. It was like my art, the way I expressed myself was through broadcasting and storytelling and meeting people through interviewing. And I wasn't wanting to wait around for someone to hire me for that. Yes, I went after those big gigs, you know, those dream gigs that we all look for in any industry. But I think it's about looking and having those goals, those big goals, but then saying, what are those little things I could do in the meantime to help me work on my craft? So when that opportunity comes, and maybe it might come, it might never come, that I'm ready because I've proven myself in my own way to work on those skills. And if anything, we're in a time more than ever before where we can do that. And so yeah, I'm like, going back to your question, I think in the end it starts with a passion and really saying like, this is who I am and what I want to do and being authentic about it. And then really going into that community and surrounding yourself by people in that community who are either, you know, part of that or already there. And the more embedded you are in that community, the more value you bring to it. You're not just taking from it. You'll see an evolution happening and you yourself will become more of an expert in that community, in that niche, instead of just trying to be everywhere and cling on to everything. It doesn't really mean anything to anyone and it won't really mean it in the long run.
I love that. It's great advice. Tell us about a time, because you've interviewed, you know, on your show, you've interviewed a lot of famous people and, you know, celebrities and VIPs. Is there a moment that you recall where you were like, I can't believe I secured this interview and I can't believe this happening, and tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because people like Snoop Dogg or Mark Cuban or Richard Branson will be on the show and people will be like, oh my God, that's so cool that you got them. But they don't realize that all came from maybe a year of running after that person. It wasn't overnight, and it happens that it was timing and schedule and the right thing to promote, and it's like everything aligning. And so I definitely think, you know, being part of something like the Oscars live stream, Grammys live stream, like big, first of its kind experiences, those are the things I look back at and I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. Like, I'm not part of E or Entertainment Tonight or all these things I thought in my head, like that would be the criteria for success. But then I started seeing something, a pattern where I'm part of a first, and that became more important to me than being part of something that I looked at or mainstream, you know, people looked at as that was the level that meant success. And I think the more you establish your own criteria for success, your own filter, the more that becomes like a real thing, and you become almost a pioneer in that path. And so being part of things like that, I think interviewing Richard Branson and having 30 minutes with him is incredible. Like when I got to the point where it wasn't just being on a red carpet with someone and then giving me a sound, and being on the outside looking in, but on the inside and really seeing that I was providing a value, not just part of a junket, and that's what it is. A lot of these things, you're like sheep, they're herding the sheep. And I wanted to get out of that because it just felt so non-fulfilling. And I was like, what am I really bringing to other people if I'm just like another commodity? I'm just another person that they're talking at. And so I think finding my niche in being that medium between the entertainment worlds and the tech worlds, and humanizing their stories for the masses, and making the celebrities, have more fun and be more thoughtful, because they were only at the time being given these platforms. They're like, and then people are starting to get it more. But when I got into covering the entertainment space from the side of social media and technology, no one was really doing that. And so celebrities wanted to talk to me because they didn't have a place to do that. So that goes back to kind of finding a niche and a gap that no one is filling.
Right.
And it's hard because you see things that people are doing that are successful, and there is definitely a model there. So why not just repeat that model? But I think that gets old, and that might maintain you and make you maybe somewhat successful, but it's not really going to make you stand out, or get accolades or gain real respect. And you're just copying, and that obviously isn't.
I remember when we had the interview for the book when I was down in LA and we had coffee. One thing that you shared with me, when you're not shy about asking for the interview, but you were also looking for the warm introduction, and then you would also circle the ask, where it would be like, if you know that person, can you just vouch for me and tell them that I'll do a good job and that I'll repurpose content? So you really, when you're talking about taking a year, you probably had a year and about 10 people all trying to help you with interviews.
Yeah, I always say, and it's also the challenge now for me, but this is just kind of like my weird, and I think it's a bit of the journalist in me, the news grind, the producer in me. I love, for someone to say, oh, you'll never get in touch with that person if I know I need to. Figuring out how much I'm a degree separated from someone, you'd be surprised at how small the world is. And I even try this out. I tried it out actually at the bar that I was at for happy hour on Friday, where I met a stranger, and I said, let's play a game. Let's see if we know anyone. I'm like, I don't know you from a hole in the wall. And we ended up knowing a group, and he's not even from LA. He happened to be visiting. So I do believe, and we're seeing this more through social networks, that you are a degree separated from people, and that could be from what we consider regular people or celebrity. And I think that the more you're open to connecting and networking, not in times of need, the more you'll see those people. Maybe they're not in that moment you need them, quote unquote, but years later you'll be like, oh my God, hey, remember we had that awesome night together, or a great conversation that lasted even 30 minutes, but it was a sincere conversation. They'll want to continue that connection because they'll see that connection came from a sincere place. It wasn't right away you're like, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
So I think it's about always going the traditional route, like the PR, definitely all this, but I always, if I can't get in touch with someone, I'll definitely put it on Twitter or Facebook, being like, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with this person. Does anyone have a connection? Help me out.
Yeah, another thing I remember you saying that you would, a lot of times when you'd meet people to get their contact information, you would say, oh, let's take a picture and post it on Twitter, and then you'd be able to get their Twitter handle immediately so that you'd tag them on it. That I thought was a fun little tip. I want to ask you something though. It's a more, specific. I think that what I've always recognized about you is that you work incredibly hard, and you keep at it even when there are challenges. And so because I've known you for a couple years, and it's in the book, but there was a time when you had a 6-figure contract that was canceled with one of the major networks.
Yeah.
And so there's been hurdles where it hasn't all been easy. And so how did you keep your passion going, and how important was your network when you had to kind of go through this hurdle?
Yeah, it was huge. It was a moment where I said to myself, what was the point of me putting in all this hard work if this was going to be my destiny, where everything was just going to fall apart? And it was one of those turning points where I had to question how much I really wanted this. And, because I could have just taken a bit of the money I had left and just gone on a vacation, traveled, and just said, okay, let's just take a breather, move on with something else. But at the time, it's funny, we sat down with Mark Cuban, and I even said to him recently, he didn't hear this side of the story from me, but I tell this a lot, where he goes, well, do you believe in what you're doing? And And we go, well, yeah, if we weren't doing it, someone else would be. And he goes, and you continue. And it's not like he wrote us a check and yeah, we maybe thought when we sat down with him, oh, he's going to save us. Like we went into that. But it was one of those things that was an invaluable lesson coming from him. And that's what made us continue on. And yeah, it was in the end, the people that we trusted around us and that were, our network and our community that allowed this to continue, because we actually proved after we separated from the network we were part of, our viewership increased. And that was because, we had amazing guests. We just kept on working hard. And also Neil Strauss, who has written a bunch of amazing New York Times bestselling books and biographies, he even said to me, and I asked him for like PR damage. I was like, what do I do? He's like, you just keep on working hard. And he's like, you can't debate someone who creates great stuff and works their ass off. And that hard work and good will survive in the long run. And I think people saw that, and hopefully they respected that endurance, and it wasn't even about me at that point. I wanted to continue putting spotlight on other great stories and other great people. And so once I took the attention off me, it continued, running, and the community built around that, and all the people that I hadn't asked for favors or support or help, in the past, but I was sincerely had a connection with them. Those people all rallied around me, and it really proved the power of maintaining the relationships in a real way.
How honest were you, Shira, with people about it being challenging or hard? Was it kind of straight face, or were you really truthful about, wow, this is a challenging time?
I think behind the scenes, when people would ask me, I would never just avoid it. And I'm not that type of person. I try to be human. I think naturally I'm a lovey-dovey, soulful, spiritual person. And so I definitely maintain a professionalism instinct of when it's okay just to be real. And you know what? I have nothing to fear and nothing to hide. And so it's kind of one of those things, you either want to work with us because we're doing awesome stuff, or you want to be judgmental and don't want to work with us because of some sort of maybe superficial gossip. And if you feel that way, you're probably not someone I want to work with anyway in the long run. So I think we were honest, but at the same time, we said what we needed to say and we moved on. We didn't, I could have done articles about, the experience and all that. And it was kind of like, it was already dealt with. We apologized. We said how important the loyalty and trust of our community was moving forward. And we just kept on going. I think it goes back to why I do what I do, which is spend more time being interested than interesting. And I think some people take that and see that in gossip mags and celebrities. They take situations like that and they make it about themselves. And I thought that wasn't what I wanted to do, because it would just perpetuate talk and gossip and feed the beast. And I just wanted to move on and keep on building and creating.
So for somebody that wants to start building their network, maybe doing content, what advice would you give to people? You've talked a lot about passion. Is that the main thing, to find your passion, or what advice?
I see a lot of people that are passionate, and then it doesn't. I think it's a mixture of passion and then being an entrepreneur and looking at what you do as a startup. I think Hollywood is now starting, and the entertainment business is starting to look at companies like that, whereas before it was oh, I'm the producer, or I'm just the talent, or I'm just this, and you're going to pay me just for that in my contract. And it's no, wait, the reason why, I would say entrepreneurs and founders are rock stars now, are looked at, is because, and they're building huge, incredible, scalable companies that are really influencing the way we all live, is because of their passion, their vision. And I do believe the startup mentality is something that industry should be taking on. And I try to bring it into what we do. And so look at yourself or your brand that you're creating. It is a startup, even if it is in content and entertainment. And I would say know, what are you trying to do? Why? And then really, I would infiltrate the community that is around that. Be part of everything, whether it be the content that community is sharing, to the events offline, be figuring out ways to collaborate with the leaders and stars that are already stars in that community. But don't just come from a place of take. I would say, even when we were starting with more YouTube stuff, which I would say was like 4 years ago, which is still in YouTube time, even though that seems like forever ago, we're still coming in 3 years later than some of the early adopters. And it was one of those things, they looked at us and they're like, who are these people coming in? So we had to really build a trust within that community. And that was from showing what value we could bring to them. It wasn't just like, be in our video. And get that more and more, there's more noise now. So really figure out what makes you stand out. And I would say, don't wait around, start experimenting with the model, and get creative and collaborate and have fun.
Yeah.
Want to be around people that they're so serious that it feels like, in the end, we're all living and breathing this. Life and work are coming together more and more than ever before. So, you need to be intense and business savvy and want to build something real. But at the same time, they need to know that you're having fun and enjoying yourself.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your time. I want to just see if there's any question from the global audience, because with people around the globe watching today. So any question for Shira from our online viewers?
Absolutely, Shira. This is Russ. I'm one of the hosts here at Creative Live. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Just want to read a question from Yes and Girl, who joins us from the Black Forest in Germany. She says, what do you think creative people need to understand and develop most when it comes to social media and technology?
Creative people?
Yeah.
Well, I think I think storytelling and creativity is mixed in with a startup mentality and a hustle mentality is the best recipe. I see sometimes, and even with people we hire, they're so creative, they're looking so creative, they're not thinking about, it beyond their bubble. And so I think you need to think about, bringing value to conversations through social, collaborating, how do you create those connections with the people that are already at the top of their field, creating shareable content, think of does this spark an emotion in me, whether it's sadness, is it funny, does it give me the shivers or whatever, the chills, but those are the basics of creating interesting and engaging content. But then now it's the next step, and we see that with BuzzFeed and the success of that is this shareable, whether it be a tweet or a video or a blog post. And I think I've created a lot of connections because I was definitely, Gary Vaynerchuk is the other way, where it's all about, his voice, and he has such a strong voice that it's just infectious, and you're like, oh my God, you just want to listen to this guy. For me, I was never the type that I was just gonna rant and rave in front of a laptop or an audience for hours, but I was interested in amazing stories, and so I felt like no one was doing that, and that also allowed me to meet interesting people and develop stronger relationships with those people because I was putting a spotlight on them, instead of just being like, hey, can I pick your brain for a second? Through my work, I gotta pick their brain. So I would say stay creative, because that's the foundation even to companies like Path, but be willing to use technology to amplify that creativity in unique ways.
That's great advice. I know that you're really busy. My last question for you is, if people want to get involved, they want to follow you, how can we support you and find out more about what you're doing?
At ShiraLazar on Twitter, youtube.com/whatstrending, whatstrending.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. We come out with bi-weekly newsletters giving you a look at what's hot online, these top videos being shared. We also bring you the stories behind those videos. We're a 24/7 machine, so connect with us everywhere, and feel free to tweet me if you have any questions. And I'm always around.
And you're always working. I will say that whenever I tweet you, I think you tweet back within about 30 seconds. So I know how hard you work, and I'm really proud of all of your success and your efforts. So keep it up. You guys are great, and thanks for being part of the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for watching, and Porter rocks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shira. Thanks, Shira.
Bye-bye. All right. I love the interview segments. They're so much fun. I have so much respect for her, and you can tell like when people really love what they're doing and they're working hard. And I think it's always something just to think about, like, am I really passionate about what I'm doing? Do I want to give 150%? Because people can tell the difference, right? They can tell when you're really into it. And I love also that she's into kind of the firsts. And so what can I do that's different? What can I do that's first or better or different? So any thoughts or questions about that interview with Shira?
I know that people online really enjoyed it. Needy said that was a lovely and powerful message. I just loved the fact. And then Barnes DA 2001, is it shareable? Awesome quote.
Yeah.
And it's really just a good guiding point. Like, is it shareable?
Well, that's
just because it's good doesn't mean it's shareable.
That's a very good segue for the next story that I'm going to tell you. And this one, I was on a plane, and as I've mentioned to people, I do talk to a lot of people on planes. A lot of that started because I wanted to learn more about people's reactions to Virgin America. And one day I was sitting next to this gentleman. His name was Jason Zada. And we started talking, and he said, you know, I'm in the film industry. I do commercials, et cetera. And I said, well, that's interesting. And we started a Facebook friendship where we ended up becoming Facebook friends. And it was probably about 2.5 years ago. It was right before Halloween, but I started seeing all of a sudden these posts coming up for this website called Take This Lollipop. Does it sound familiar to anybody? Yeah. Well, Take This Lollipop was one of the first videos that integrated the social media Facebook API with a video. So it has 13 million views on it probably now today, but it's at the website takethislollipop.com. But what happened was, it was Jason's experiment. He put it together right before Halloween. It was a creative project that he did for sweat equity, and he just really wanted to do it and see what would happen. And it was exploring the idea of privacy and social media and how much of our information is online. So we're not sharing the video here, but I encourage you guys to look at it, because it's one of those things where you're like, wow, like he really pushed it and he put himself out there. And so what happens is you sign in through Facebook, and then a video that's customized pops back out, and it may sound scary, but it's a stalker who is looking at your Facebook information and follows you. And it seems, very, very specific, because your profile photo turns into a picture on the dashboard, et cetera. So what happened, though, is that this turned into a viral sensation right around the Halloween period. And people were actually then posting videos of themselves watching it and their reaction, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So you had this whole community building around this element. So what I want you to think about was, this was him being a producer, right? You're not really thinking about this as networking, but what happened was, the analogy I would use is if you're a magnet, and when you're networking, when you have to constantly go to the contacts, with Jason, this project became his calling card. So immediately what happened was he was attracting all this interest. He was doing something that was different. So people in Hollywood started calling him. He ended up getting an agent from this. And so again, you never really know what is going to happen after you put yourself out there, but you really have to believe in yourself and say, hey, I'm going to take a risk. And sometimes people are going to like it and sometimes they won't. But then when something hits, amazing things could happen. So, funny, I met Jason on a plane. I saw that this was happening, so I wrote an article about Take This Lollipop. Ultimately, what happened was we never met in person. We talked on the phone once, and we do live both in Marin. I never ever saw him until, again, I ran into him at the airport. So, it's another way that conversations can lead to, a blog post that I wrote, and really interesting. So I think he's a great one to think about. So what I want you to think about is, what can you produce, your ideas, your products, creativity, brainstorm sessions. What can you do that's of value that you can bring to your community?